82%. 82% of marketers have worked on a rebranding project, but only 39% say they've achieved a unified brand experience. More than half of rebrands end up with confused customers, wasted resources, and lost brand equity. The challenge becomes even more complex when you're dealing with multiple brands with their own audiences. So, how do you unify disparate brand voices without destroying what made each brand valuable? I'm Benjamin Shapiro, and joining me today is Danielle Pederson, the CMO of Amaze, a publicly traded creator commerce platform that serves over 137 million creators across 163 countries. And today, Danielle is going to walk us through her methodology for combining Amaze's 5 distinct creator brands into one cohesive platform without destroying the company's brand equity. Danielle, welcome to the Martech podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here.
Excited to have you on the show. Congratulations. Rumor has it this is your first podcast.
It is my first podcast.
How exciting to have you here telling the story for the first time of Amaze combining 5 companies into essentially one creator platform. Let's start off at the top. Walk me through what happened with Amaze and when did you realize you needed to rebrand?
We found ourselves in a really unique position of having multiple creator solutions. We call them solutions. Each one of those solutions had a strong individual equity, but not really a cohesive story. So as you can imagine, our customers were confused. There was different logins, different tones, really just different levels of trust. Even internally, we couldn't really tell one consistent story to our investors, to our creators, obviously, or to our partners. So we actually did a pretty fun company exercise, and we asked our employees how they would explain what we do at Amaze to their favorite relatives or to their kids. And most of them had no clue really how to package this up. So that was sort of an aha moment for us. We realized that we didn't really have a brand problem per se, but we had a clarity problem. And the rebrand became about building one unified narrative that would help us scale across the current audiences that we had, but also, which was really important to us, to be able to scale across every new acquisition that we made.
So I'm familiar with Amaze because I remember the brand Teespring, which was like a hot startup back in the day. Now it's an established, sort of long-standing company. But you have a series of other creator-centric brands. Talk to me about what's the common theme between all of those brands?
Each one of those brands sets out to help creators monetize their fan base in one way or the other. So we have a Spring by Amaze platform, which helps creators launch their own products and merch lines. We have Teespring Marketplace, which brings visibility to those products. We have Studio by Amaze, which helps creators design and create more compelling digital websites, so to speak. So yeah, we really try to acquire companies that help creators do better at what they're trying to do, which is create content, and then we can do the rest by helping them monetize that.
All right, so the common theme is all of the platforms that you own or solutions were all related to supporting creators and they were distinct brands. So essentially you were a portfolio or a holding company and you decided to move away from individual properties, combining them into one.
Correct. Yes, and they didn't necessarily exist as creator companies when we acquired them, but that was the overall goal we had in mind for them as they came into our ecosystem.
So how did you think about unifying those brands without losing the independent brand equity that each one of those companies had built?
We started with taxonomy and naming conventions, interestingly enough, to build an entire system, not necessarily just a rebrand campaign. So we designed an umbrella brand, which is Amaze, and our sub brand sat underneath that umbrella to help transition the equity and familiarity of those sub brands rather than start with a mission. So we rolled everything out kind of in phases. First internally and then to the public. But we didn't deprecate any of the brands. We sort of just graduated them, if you will. Spring, or formerly Teespring, as you mentioned, became Spring by Amaze. Our Teespring Marketplace came Teespring Marketplace by Amaze, which was sort of the bridge that helped creators and fans connect the dots. Is kind of just like re-architecturing a city without really tearing down the landmarks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the sort of you mentioned taxonomy, but essentially you're tacking on by Amaze, so you're adding a brand as a modifier to the existing brands. I'm assuming there's a technical component to this as well. You mentioned that you had like login unification, or I don't know, you didn't say you had login unifications, but as you're adding the by Amaze, are you sort of changing the back end to make all the infrastructure the same as well?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up. So adding the buy Amaze was sort of the phase 2 in the rebrand. The phase 3 would be unifying it all under one login. So right now we kept the platforms as they exist. There are still multiple logins. There's just more brand cohesiveness because visually they all make sense together and they're all brought under one storyline. But the phase 3 really was bringing everything under the Amaze umbrella, allowing people to log into Amaze and to I should say this is the goal and objective of what we're trying to do. We haven't done it yet, but the goal would be to try to bring all of that under one umbrella and one login, so that a creator comes to our company, logs into Amaze, and is presented with multiple different solutions based on wherever they are in their journey as a creator.
You said you started with this notion of taxonomy, which to me sounds like you figured out the name first
Mhm.
and then worked backwards from there. Most of the time, when I hear the rebranding story, it is we had a mission. From the mission came the name. From the name came the marketing.
Correct, yes.
Why did you go essentially what is backwards from the traditional way of thinking about what's the unified story and then creating the name?
We really didn't wanna disrupt, the solutions as they currently existed. Each of the sub-brands already had its own mission and audience, and so instead of starting with the mission statement, as you said, we really felt it was more important to start with the architecture so that when we net it out, we would have, again, m we would have the architecture built so that each one of the brands leveled up to the core, corporate brand. Um, that meant we needed a corporate framework that could unify everything, which I spoke about earlier. And like you mentioned, we essentially went backwards on purpose, building that strong corporate identity enough so that any new solution or sub brand we acquired could plug into it immediately and make sense to our creators, investors, and partners rather than us having to scramble and be like, okay, now we need to figure out how this fits in. It really was meant to be very flexible, and the
Mhm.
mission ultimately evolved from that ecosystem we built, not the other way around.
I'm curious to hear how you think about marketing. You went from 3 or 5 brands, which became sub-brands with essentially a corporate brand on top.
Mhm.
You went from 5 to 6 brands, and now one of them is supposed to rule them all. And you still have the exercise of marketing each individual solution, what used to be a brand,
Mhm.
and now you have this umbrella brand.
Mhm.
When you're thinking about marketing, are you, um, extracting marketing resources from promoting the individual solutions to promote the brand? Did you get more budget? Like, how do you think about, well, let's promote Amaze, let's sell Amaze as opposed to let's sell Spring, let's sell our creator solution?
What's interesting in what we did and what we built was that Amaze is the corporate identity and what allows us to have the cohesive story, but it doesn't necessarily need to be promoted outside of having a corporate website that houses all of our solutions in one place. Because when you have Spring by Amaze, when you have Teespring Marketplace by Amaze, that Amaze becomes front and center in the conversation, which is why I call it phase 2 and phase 3 being, we have one central login. Um, so we do continue to answer your question, operate each of the businesses individually. But the Amaze piece is sort of built into that marketing. And the
Mhm.
goal again and the objective is that one day that becomes um the main source of truth for our creators and they recognize it because it's been in their face using the solutions all this time.
Yeah, so the the exercise of rebranding never ends, right? You don't just slap a new logo on and say you're done. There's this constant tweaking and repositioning, and it is a long-standing thing to go from one brand to another.
Mhm.
Um, Give me your advice for timing a rebrand where you don't stop your operations, but you're doing this phased approach?
We made a joke internally that our rebranding exercises were while we were scaling, were like repairing a plane that's flying. You can't land the plane, and but you can fix it in phases maybe. So the phases became really important. Um, we rolled out all the visual and name changes incrementally so that each one of the touch points that we built, the phases, I've said phases a lot, but super important. Each one of those had time to build trust with our employees, which was important, but also with the audiences that we served. And this really did, it seems pretty basic, but it really did allow us to retain operations at close to 100% because we were really protective of our engineering and operation teams while we were doing this.
All right. So the internal employees are sitting around saying, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm working on 5 different companies all at once. I'm super stressed. And you said, look, I'm going to clean this up for you. Here's your company identity. Now you can get back to work. You've got one company that you're working for,
Mm.
5 separate phases, not phases. Look, now I'm doing it. 5 separate solutions,
Yep.
products that you're selling that all umbrella into one,
Mhm.
and you're slowly making the migration from brand to brand so the customers get this buy Amaze
Mhm.
experience.
Yes.
What's the future of Amaze as a brand? Now that you have this cohesive, well thought out, unified brand experience, you're going to do a central login to make some utility for the customers. But are you running your Amaze Super Bowl ad next? What happens now that you have this unified brand?
Hey, I won't deny that completely, but well, I won't confirm or deny that, I should say, but, I think that the objective long term is that when people think of the creator economy, when creators come in thinking about how they would like to make money, that Amaze is at the forefront of those conversations, and that really is the long goal.
How did you convince your CEO to commit rebranding resources when it can't be measured like something like performance marketing?
Our CEO likes to move fast, and so our conversation wasn't about vanity, right? A lot of times people think that rebrands like, "Oh, someone doesn't like this color," or like, again, logo, like you mentioned. The conversation wasn't around vanity, it was around the velocity. So in order for us to move as fast as he wanted us to move, the rebrand was so important. Without that unified brand, our marketing spend was fragmented across all the ecosystems, like you mentioned. By unifying Amaze, we could focus all of our dollars on one story and one funnel and one set of KPIs and really turn, vanity brand into a growth strategy, a long-term growth strategy.
Yeah, it's funny as I think about the rebranding stories I've heard. Normally, it is new CMO comes in, tries to rescue the brand and says, "We got to start all over. We're going to even rename the company." And now all of a sudden we're wasting marketing budget, resources, cycles doing things like having logo discussions, buying domains, like all the headaches that go around rebranding. And what's interesting to me about your story is there is a unification that actually impacts your marketing spend, right?
Mhm,
You were able to combine resources once the rebrand was done, as opposed to a more traditional one brand rebrand just tends to be a distraction. Uh,
mhm.
if you could go back and do it again, what would you do differently?
Oof, that's tough. Thinking back, we definitely could have been more protective of engineering and operations resources. That was definitely something that we set out to do. But again, being in growth mode as we are, I think we could have done a better job at that. Otherwise, I don't think we could have really done much different. I'm really happy with the way that this came out and the story that we built. And yeah, it was less about logos and colors and more about how we go out and tell our story, and so I think it came out really great.
Love the cohesive story about combining brands and taking that central theme that you have and not only unifying it from a logo and a nomenclature, not only unifying it from a logo and a nomenclature perspective, but also allowing the company to reallocate its resources to focus on promoting one
Mm.
thing that broadly speaks to the company's mission. And even though to me, the way that you went about it, you thought name instead of mission first, you still ended up this place where it helps preserve marketing resources, which
Mhm.
is kind of the opposite of what I hear from most rebranding stories. So kudos to you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, Danielle, I want to move on to our lightning round where I'm going to ask you a couple of MarTech related questions
Do it.
about you, your company, your experience, and specifically a little bit about rebranding. Are you ready?
I'm ready as I'll ever be.
All right, here we go. What's the biggest MarTech fail you've ever experienced?
Um, so during our rebrand, we integrated 3 different CRMs, if you can imagine, before realizing none of those spoke the same data language, which was really kind of detrimental to that exercise. So it taught me a lot about tech stacks and migrating brands together. But the tech stacks don't create clarity; the strategy does. But yeah, those CRMs, man, that gave us a run for our money.
Was it that each individual property you were merging together had its own CRMs and you realized you had three, or
Yes,
did you
absolutely.
just
So, it was that, and then it was, this exercise of trying to not lose all the data that lives within each one of those CRMs, right? You're trying to piece together things, you're trying to Band-Aid things when really you should have just started from scratch.
I won't ask you who you dumped, but who did you go with as your one CRM?
We went with HubSpot.
There you go. I've heard of them. All right, let's move on.
Alright.
What is the difference between being a CMO of a private company versus a public company?
Sure. I can ask this a lot. A private company, you sell a vision. And a public company, you sell proof. So every brand decision has to map back to investor confidence, predictability, transparency. It really forces you to lead with data, but again, never lose that story that you've built.
It seems like the spotlight is always on you when you are at a publicly traded company, but you're also reporting to the quarter, right? Since you're reporting to the street, have the metrics and KPIs changed for you as a CMO?
No, they haven't changed, they just become more visible to the world. But yeah, I mean, this is my first time, leading marketing at a public company, so it's been an exciting learning curve for me. But again, yeah, just really it's so clear as we made the transition that private company is really more about the vision and what you're trying to do, and the public company is like, "Okay, here's proof that we were able to do that," which is actually really exciting, so
Here's a question for my kids. What should marketers understand about Roblox as a serious platform for creators?
Love it. So we recently launched a platform called Amaze Digital Fits, which exists on Roblox, and it showed us that virtual merchandise can drive the same emotional value as physical products. So I'm sure your kids will tell you that in Roblox they get to play games as an avatar, and we've created a product where you can dress those avatars in specific types of clothes, but then also go back and print physical products so you can match your avatar, which is really fun. So I think marketers really should stop thinking um, about Roblox as sort of a niche platform, and kind of understanding maybe it's a frontier, maybe a brand experience in general.
One of the things that I feel like people miss about platforms like Roblox is they are, as much as they are games, they are communication platforms,
Mhm.
right? For the younger generation, you don't run to the schoolyard to hang out with your friends and light things on fire anymore. You, not that I would ever do that.
Mm,
You connect with the headset on and your iPad, and you talk to your friends, and you get to have all that sort of camaraderie, but most of it's a digital experience.
exactly.
So the communication platform and being part of that conversation amongst friends tends to be more powerful to me than the actual physical gameplay.
Yeah, 100%. And we are all about figuring out a way to make those communities and those communications more exciting, and I think that's what we sought out with to do with Amaze Digital Fits.
All right, we're going to keep it in the creator realm. I want to ask you, what platform would you suggest a new creator who is starting from square one use to make their first $100,000 as a creator?
It's really about building an audience, and the building an audience piece comes from being authentic and from being able to talk about something that you really care about. And so I suggest that any creator who is starting out at square one really find the thing that they're passionate about and that they can be authentic about, because that comes through in their content. It's really less about the platform to me and more about how they're able to build connections with people that are online. That's really all that people are looking to do online, is build those connections. And so I would say, start from there. And then once you get some traction and your audience is growing, you can come to our platform, and we can help you monetize the fan base that you've built.
Talk to me a little bit about that. I totally agree with you in the sense of the platform has to be a fit for who the creator is.
Mhm,
You're great at video editing, you got a beautiful face,
mhm.
you're traveling around, there's always good scenery, be a YouTuber.
Sure.
You want to sit at home and talk in front of a microphone? Start a podcast, right? You're a great writer, okay, be on Substack. Like that stuff, just keep doing, do something great, do authentic, have a clear position, build an audience, be authentic. Now you've got an audience. How do I turn that into dollars?
Yep. Well, that's where Amaze comes in. You come in there. Well, there's multiple ways that you can turn your audience into dollars. One of those ways is launching your own merch line and selling products to your fans. So you come in, you design products based on whatever vertical that you create content in, and you add those designs to products and you sell them to your fans. And the idea is that you've created such a connection with them and they've been so excited about the things that you post that they would want to buy them from you. And that's one of the main ways that we help creators monetize their fans.
So I need to start making Martech t-shirts to make my first hundred thousand
100%
dollars.
that you signed up.
Well, there's that, and I think of the merch aspect and what Amaze does very specifically focused on primarily consumer content, right? And there's sponsorships, there's advertising revenue,
Mhm.
and then some people have products and services and they're using their content as an ABM strategy. So on the consumer side, I totally agree with you. Merchandising, advertising, and sponsorship seems to be the way. In my world, it is ABM, build a brand, sell your service. And a lot of that has to do with not only the relationship between you and the audience, it's the relationship with the person that you're talking to and creating the content with as well.
Mhm. 100%. It's very similar for content creators, though. It's really about authenticity and connecting with your audience across all those things. If you have a connection with your audience, the monetization part happens naturally.
Well, Danielle, I have to congratulate you, I think threefold. Number one, congratulations on executing a wonderful rebrand and combining five relatively disparate brands into a unified voice. Congratulations on your first CMO job at a publicly traded company. And also, most importantly, congratulations on completing your first ever podcast.
Thank you so much. Times 3.
All right. And that wraps up this episode of the Martech Podcast. Thanks to Danielle Pederson, the CMO of Amaze, for joining us. If you'd like to contact Danielle, you can find a link to her LinkedIn profile in our show notes or on martechpod.com, or you can visit her company's website, which is amaze.co. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a daily stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, hit the subscribe button in your podcast app or subscribe on YouTube, and we'll be back in your feed in the next week. All right, that's it for today. But until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.